Welcome and thank you for speaking with us. Could we start off by having you tell me a little bit about your book?
So I have 2 books out currently, but the main book, which has been the topic of discussion throughout the United States, is All Boys Aren't Blue. That is my memoir, young adult Black queer memoir. The book just really talks about my journey through identity, gender, sexuality, but also my journey through Blackness and fully coming to terms with the totality of my being the intersection of those 2 things, Blackness and queerness, and how I can't just show up in any room as one or the other, how I show up as a whole person and how both of those things matter.
What do you think was one of the hardest stories to write about in All Boys Aren't Blue?
The entire book is a work where I have to be extremely vulnerable and transparent. I think the hardest sections are, interestingly enough, the 2 sections that are being attacked the most. When you then look at the reality of the statistics, there is no place for anyone who identifies as man or male to really say, I've been harmed, I've been abused. And so in writing that story and trying to create and break that space, it was also an attempt to fight against masculinity, which was a thing that said, you should have fought back, you should have punched him, you should have killed him, you should have harmed him. When the real answer is, when you get into that situation, no one actually knows how they're actually gonna react. And so in being that vulnerable to share my story and being that vulnerable to put that messaging out there, I had to go to a place where I knew I was making myself a potential target. Because these are things that we have always been taught are things that you do not talk about publicly.
If you could maybe pick 2 or 3 main things that you really would like your readers to take away from your book, what would those things be?
The first person I want to have to take away is that person who has the same, the similar or shared experience that I had growing up as a Black queer youth who didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the tools, didn't have the resources. My work gives them all of that, and it gives them so much more to look forward to, and it gives them a person they can attach themselves to, and it gives them what I like to say, the possibility model. When you can see yourself in the world and feel like, wow, I'm reflected in this world and I too could do like George did and I can break into spaces and do all of these things. I think the second takeaway is always going to be for the people who exist around us, our parents, our guardians, our teachers, our educators, those people who watch us, know us, but don't necessarily know our story, can't fully process what we're going through, what it is that we deal with. I love that they now have this tool and this resource to read it and read it with their child or read it separately from and say, okay, I can start from love. If you start from love and you start from a place of unconditional love and you start from a place of where you're not so focused on, well, society says that my child is a boy and so you can't have an easy bake oven or you can't play with dolls. And it's like, no, remove what society says and just read this story and understand that your child is naturally going to gravitate to whatever is innate to them, and that's what you're supposed to nurture.
Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.